Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, All Nation Renovation, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP. Additional funding has been provided by grants from AVR Realty Company, LLC, Beechwood Organization, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, C.B. Richard Ellis, Cushman & Wakefield, the Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Stephen Napolitano, First American Title Insurance Company, Friedman, LLP, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns and Gian Tomasi, Grubb and Ellis, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Markham LLP, Marcus Millichap Real Estate Investment Services, Margolin Weiner and Evans LLP, Massey Knackle Realty Services, M&T Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Moynihan Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Orphanides and Associates, Sterling and Sterling, Urban American, the Wickoff Group.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller. So here we are in the fall of 2010, celebrating my 10th season, the beginning of my 10th season, like to have with good friends. And, you know, how's the residential market doing? How is the residential rental market, the residential condo market? How is New York City doing in general? So I've assembled 4 individuals who really understand what's going on, who are active players and involvement in the residential rental and sale market in New York and in the region. My guests today include Philip Eisenberg, Chairman and CEO of Urban American, David von Spreckelsen, Senior Vice President, Toll Brothers City Living, Richard Marin, Chairman and CEO, Africa Israel Investments USA, and last but never least, my good friend Hal Fettner, the President and CEO of Durst Fettner Residential. So Hal, we're in September of 2010. You know, how do you see the market? I mean, you have residential, you have condos. How's the market? Has it returned? You know, the 2 months free rents, have they gone away? You know, the brokerage fee, how do you see that?
Well, let's first start with, we've never were offering 2 free months.
I never said you
Okay,
did.
I just, you know, for our viewers out there, Durst Fettner was not offering 2 free months free rent. For us and our portfolio, the market is somewhat segmented. The Upper East Side is still languishing. We're getting nice rents, but we're working hard to get those rents. Something on 31st and 6th, where the Epic is, we're getting spectacular rents. That market, we were never hit that hard. In terms of concessions, we're not offering very many concessions, if any concessions at all there. So stuff that we have on the west side, the Helena, is doing really very well. You know, where we were once offering concessions, we're no longer offering concessions. And then the Victory, where we're competing with a lot of other great product, that building we're not struggling, but we're working to either retain our residents or keep or find new residents.
Philip, you have about 10,000 units?
14,000.
14,
Who's counting?
Who's counting, you know, in a little minor thing. How do you see it? I mean, you're in the boroughs. You're in Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, right?
Staten Island.
You have Staten Island, too.
A little bit, yeah.
And Brooklyn, so you're all 5 boroughs, Union City, New Jersey. How do you see your market? Because how, I'd say, is higher in a market rate. You know, newer buildings, higher market rate apartments. How do you see the market?
Well, as you know, most of our buildings are older buildings, and then we have some that were built, you know, just post '74 that came out of Mitchell Armour. And what we see is, whereas we used to last year would give some concessions in some of the buildings, we're not giving any. Where we still have a few areas in which we're paying the broker, but for instance, in Queens, in most buildings, we're not paying the broker. In the in the ex-Mitchell-Amas in the Putnam portfolio, which are mostly Upper Manhattan, 101st Street and First, 110th and Fifth, and Roosevelt Island. We did give concessions last year on renewals. Now we're just holding the line at the same rent. We're not raising them in those portfolios. But for the most part, we're getting better rents than I thought we would get. And if you remember last year, I said it was going to come back in our area. This is workforce housing. This is necessity housing. So, we have people who need good value in order to survive. And we're starting to see, a little more willingness to pay money. We're getting rent raises. My concern always was it's all about jobs and employment, but I've always thought that our area is what I call the phantom unemployment, which is the people who are working at 2 or 3 jobs in a family have lost one, and they're not unemployed yet, but things are tougher. And in those areas, we had to be very sensitive. But that's starting to come back where we're getting the raises there, too, small raises.
Now, Rick, you have one rental building in this market, and around the country, they're different, at 88 Leonard. How do you see your rental building these days down there?
It's doing much better in 2010. 2009, we saw occupancy dip to 84, 85%. We were giving 1 month concessions. And almost all of 2010, we've been running 99 to 100% occupied. We've removed the concessions, and we've started to see the rates creep up. Of course, we're dealing with more of the young urban professional that would want to be in Tribeca. So we have a little more price flexibility to price up as the market improves, and we're starting to do that.
David, I mean, Toll Brothers City Living is an entity part of the Toll Brothers operation, and you have a couple of for-sale condos today. You have Northside Piers in Williamsburg. You have the property on 33rd Street off 2nd Avenue.
303 East 33rd Street.
And do you have any other projects today that are
not
for
in
sale?
sales right now.
Now, where's the sales market? Where do you see that these days?
Well, both of those jobs we opened basically the day that Lehman Brothers tanked, and so there was a year when almost nothing sold at all. And then we started,
That's
getting
why it's
closer.
good. It's 2-year anniversary. It's only a celebration afterwards, right?
We then, as we got farther along with the buildings, the market started to slowly come back, and now we have virtually immediate occupancy. Things have picked up, so we no longer get these crazy lowball offers. I mean, people are more realistic now, but we're getting numbers that are 10, 15, 20% less than we had pro forma when we put the offering plans out a couple of years ago.
And we were talking before about Williamsburg because there's so much product coming on. Is it like Hal was saying prior to when they go to the Victory, with brochures of all the different places? People are going around and shopping all the buildings?
They are, yeah. They walk around the neighborhood. And some there are serious buyers, and there are just tourists too, because we've opened the waterfront now. We've got a beautiful pier. We've got an esplanade. So people come down in the summer. There's some parks that are open there now. So you do get some people who are just touring, and they have the brochure from the Edge and everybody else. But we have a lot of real buyers too. And we've done well. We sold 180 units in the first building, and now we've got close to 100 sold in the second building.
Now, Rick, you have 2 for sale existing in Lower Manhattan, 111 Fulton Street and 20 Pine. How are they doing today?
They're doing extremely well. We're about 90% sold at 20 Pine and about 95% sold at Fulton District, which is a big change from where we were about 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we were seriously considering doing some bulk sales, and at levels that were considerably lower than what we're able to get today. We're up very close, in some cases actually approaching the prices that we originally planned to sell the units for. So we've been very pleased with the improvement in the downtown market.
An interesting question, and Hal has seen this in a number of his properties, because on the projects that Hal and Douglas have done, in the 80-20, you have the tax abatements. You've had, and you also have the tax abatements in both cases, 25 years in Brooklyn, 10 years in Manhattan. You have the 421 Gs. in the two buildings, which is an abatement of conversion of office to residential. Do you think, is that helping the sales? If you didn't have the 421Gs, do you think it would be hurting your sales?
Oh, absolutely. It's been a big plus, and I think it was all part of the strategy to develop downtown after 9/11. And we did that with both 88 Leonard, in the case of an 80, actually that's a 95.5
I remember, yes.
Rental with
Liberty Bond financing.
With Liberty Bond financing. That's I think we paid 30 basis points this year in our total financing cost. And with our condos, including 15 Broad, which you know is a big success and sell out early on in the cycle. So yes, it's the tax abatement's a big plus.
Now, Philip, you converted a couple of buildings. How have they done?
Well, we're at the point where we're getting the numbers again that we thought we'd get when we opened, just like you are, and we don't have very much product. Everything that's been renovated in those buildings where we've got the apartments back, we've just about sold. So we're doing fine in the sense of it's all moving and we're getting the prices. There was a time when we were selling at lower prices. There was also a time when we said, gee, we priced it too low, but that came about coming back down to reality.
Everyone, with the exception of Mr. Von Sprekelsen, have to worry about the bank world because you have to borrow money. Toll Brothers, big company, public company. You're a public company, but you borrow over here. We were talking about you're renovating this building, and you're really taking the guts out of it. Let's talk about this new development and how banks are looking at it. The Fifth Avenue property.
Well, 1212 Fifth Avenue is a 120,000 square foot renovation. We bought the property from Mount Sinai, and we are now doing a gut rehab. We're able to take advantage of the fact that there's not a lot of construction going on right now, so we've gotten great subcontractors who are hungry. So our pricing is spectacular, our construction pricing. So
what size are the units going to be?
The apartment, this is going to be a commercial, right, for the apartments? It's, the apartments are
I gave him some commercial.
That's okay. They're 2 and 3 bedrooms, family size. We have one line of 1-bedroom units, which we're really designing for doctors who we think are going to want to have a pied-à-terre.
Now, you have a small little property called the Clock Tower. Madison Square Park, everybody loves, possibly because of the Shake Shack, 11 Madison, SD26, a couple of other restaurants, and it's Italy also, that just recently opened up. You have all these situations over there. What are you going to do over there, and how do you see that in this new conversion market?
Well, we've always planned for that property to be a condo, and we've looked and listened to everybody's proposal about everything from boutique hotel all the way to somebody that suggested student housing for NYU.
Not the worst idea.
Well, maybe for some buildings. We don't think it was the best idea for that
I didn't say
building.
that was the building, but student housing, especially in New York.
It can work, and there is a demand. But we've stuck with a condo plan, leaving the first 2 floors as commercial space, probably for another name brand celebrity restaurant. But the condo plan, that's the change from 2007 to now, is that we filed a 55-unit condo plan with what I would call ultra-luxury scaled apartments. And our market research and field tells us that we should be going more for an 80-unit type conversion. We've looked at everything up to as high as a 110-unit conversion, but don't like the loss factors. So we're gonna build it out as about an 80-unit conversion. So slightly smaller, slightly.
How many square feet would a unit be?
I think you can expect them to be 1,600 to 1,800.
Now, David,
there will be a couple full floors, but not too many.
In your unit?
No, I'm laughing because at 1212 Fifth Avenue, I think are on our 3rd or 4th set of plans.
Right. As the market changes.
We were doing very, very large units. We're basically taking the floor and dividing it in half. We then went to basically exactly 80-something units. We were going to have 6, 7 apartments per floor, and now we're back to 4 apartments per floor.
Well, the architects have to earn a living.
My architects are doing very well. So.
Forget the architects earning a living. Let's talk about the banks. You're closing on a construction loan tomorrow. You've recently got some financing. We failed to talk about the small little building you have on West End Avenue called the Apthorp, which we'll get over there in a minute. How are banks looking today in the residential market towards you? I mean, the week before I had these banks talking, and there's one terminology, strong, well-capitalized developer.
Yes.
That was the comment, just in general.
Can I add one adjective to that? Responsible developers.
Yes.
Because I think coming through this cycle, there were a lot of people that maybe acted less than responsibly towards their banks, and that's been one of our mantras, to act responsibly and restructure with the cooperation of the banks. And I think those who've done that come out a lot better.
Sponsorship is important. Underwriting is still very difficult with some of these banks, and I agree. They're looking at the sponsorship of the development team, and they're looking at past history much more closely. We wanted a non-recourse loan, and we were willing to put our equity into this project because our attitude is, if I sign a recourse deal, I might as well have just written the check. So, but we had banks. We had banks who were willing to do non-recourse deal, and the pricing was actually okay. I say okay.
It's all
it's all relative, as over the years.
Great time for you. The banks last week said they want to do rent-regulated multifamily. Have you seen it in the last 20 years, such an aggressive time that banks looking to give away money?
Well, putting aside the whole securitized market that used to chase you around on discounted cash flows, no. I think what's amazing to me is, and I spent a lot of years representing banks where you lent the money and then they represented the banks trying to get them back as a lawyer. But in all the different cycles, the most amazing thing to me is that a bank is encouraging you to come in and either pay it down a little bit or pay a prepayment penalty, let's say of a point. And for that point, they're going to drop your rate by a point and extend you out to 5 or 7 years. Well, that's a pretty good return on your money. If you pay them a point and then get that point back every year for the rest of the loan. I've never seen
I heard
rates like this since I borrowed money from my father.
And this is the comment. The banks the prior week said that there's 5, 7, and 10-year money. And, look, it's easier to pay that point. And they're willing to put it out, at rates in the 4s. 4%, 10-year 5. Fortunately, you have 80-20 financing. Otherwise, it would pay to get out of the program. And you're at Liberty Bond financing.
Well, actually, in our fund, we still have a lot of dry powder, which my theory was I'm going to use it to buy distressed stuff, which I can't find. But we're making some reasonable purchases. But to me, it's better to take some of that money and use it for prepayment penalties or repay a loan down a bit in order to get the reduction in the rates. And when you go to our investors, they say, that's a great deal. You should use the money for that. What better return can you get on that money?
Distressed debt. Hal just bought a note a couple of months ago for distressed debt. What are you planning to do on that if you get the note?
If we're fortunate, well, we have the note. If we get the property. The property has to have some commercial component at the base of the building up to a certain height. And we've actually been already speaking with 1 or 2 retail tenants, off the record. And then it's going to be an 80-20 above residential, which for us we're excited about because the entrance to the residential tower would be directly across from the Epic.
No question. Dumbo.
Yes.
What are you doing in Dumbo?
We bought a site just before Christmas, last Christmas, and we've taken it through the landmarks process. It's in a landmark neighborhood, and we're now wrestling with DOB to get what we want, and we hope to break ground in the spring, in the late fall. And it's a through lot, so there's 2 buildings. One building is more of a loft building. We have more height there. We're going to do something that's typical in the Dumbo market, which is high ceilings, loft-like. And the other one is a more traditional new construction building.
How many units?
It's only a total of 67 units, not a big site. But, these days, you almost want to have less rather than more product because it starts getting tough when you got more than 100 units to slog through the end of it. It's a challenge because there's really no pace right now. You can get decent numbers, but to get decent numbers and good pace is really challenging in this market.
A number of, the prior season, a number of people said to me that the biggest problem that they have is end loans. Are you still seeing that difficulty in end loans?
it still is an issue. I mean, luckily we've gotten to the thresholds in our buildings now where we're able to qualify for Fannie Mae, and so that's a big help. But without that, it's difficult, and it's something that we've all been adjusting to. Getting Fannie Mae approval is a priority now.
Hal?
Yeah, for the loan that we're closing tomorrow, we had a number of banks who wanted to look at doing the deal with Durst Bednar. And again, it's because we had a lot of equity in the deal. One of the requirements that we put on the banks was that they had to present to us what they were going to help us do with the end loans. It's clearly very, very important. And it goes to the heart of the success of the buyers, especially for the market that we expect that are going to come to 1212 Fifth Avenue. They're going to need end loans.
Now, what about, FHA? I worry a little bit about the FHA, the 3.5%, that type of loan, which that was the killer of the past decade, because, the Alt-A and the situation. Do you see, has that helped you sell some units?
We got it recently in our second tower in Williamsburg, and I'd say maybe a handful of units where, the purchasers are utilizing that. It hasn't been a big component, but it's another thing to have out there to meet a certain segment.
To sell today a unit, do you have to give, besides the price point difference, do you have to give the transfer fees? Do you have to,
almost everybody's going to ask for transfer taxes and for the sponsor to pay its attorney. So that's almost a given at this point, in addition to sometimes some concession on pricing. But yeah, those are the two big items in the closing costs that they look for.
Philip, when you sold the two conversions, did you have to pay any of those, or
we're paying the transfer taxes?
You paid the transfer tax.
Yeah.
Now, what about amenities today? I remember my joke a number of years ago in the boom days. I think Ken Horn put the best comment: is people used to buy from plans. They didn't care, And Ken, one time I said, "What happened to everybody had the Sub-Zero and the the Gen Air oven?" And one time the idea, he says, "Yeah, somebody was using it to store shirts because nobody ever opened up the oven in their life." Today, what kind of amenities are you planning in Dumbo? What kind of amenities, are you planning on Fifth Avenue and you at the Clock Tower?
Well, I think for us, since we're talking about conversions, a lot of it depends on the footprint of the building and what you have. At 20 Pine and at 111 Fulton, we were able to put in very full array of amenities. We have a hammam. We have in 20 Pine, we have a great spa and pools and roof decks. And those have worked out very nicely. I think at Apthorp and Clock, we have a different type of constraint. I mean, we'll have gyms in both of them, but there's no room for pools. There's no room for those types of amenities. So I think it depends on the location.
Let's talk about the Apthorp. I failed to say, that's a small little conversion. What's going on at the Everybody knows about the Apthorp.
Yeah, no, everybody does seem to know about the Apthorp. I think when you go into a project that's the highest priced condo conversion project of all time, it tends to get a little bit of profile. We had a number of partnership issues and management issues, which we had to spend an inordinate amount of time clearing out. We did that successfully. We finished that off last year. And then we had a very, very short window of time to sell units to meet the effectiveness deadline from the Attorney General's office. A lot of people thought we couldn't do it. We had to sell 25 units. We went into contract on 35 units. So we did have to cut our prices to do that, but we accomplished that, and getting bona fide buyers is, of course, a challenge. We got 35 bona fide buyers. The AG vetted it over a course of 8 months, and they gave it the stamp of approval at the end of May. And so they declared effectiveness, and during that period of time we also renegotiated with our banks and gave ourselves 3 more years and really a wonderful financing, including a reduction in the mezzanine debt because there was a repurchase at deep discount for almost $70 million of mezzanine. So we were able to restructure it. We were able to stabilize the financing. We've got the effectiveness. And I might add, we've made one sale since the conversion process because we haven't really started selling again, but we did it to prove that we could, and we sold over $2,000 a square foot. So we believe very strongly that it's an iconic building that people are going to want. And you'll see a new marketing campaign this fall.
So here's my question. You've really been only Manhattan. You've only been Manhattan. you've been in sales, Manhattan, rentals, everywhere else. How do you look at the residential market in the rental market out of Manhattan? Any thoughts? I mean, you own a note in Long Island City.
We own a note in Long Island City, and a year ago we came precariously close to doing a deal in Long Island City. I mean, we love the Long Island City market. I think there's a lot going on there. There's a great vibe. If you looked at the New York Times this past weekend, a lot of these buildings have vibes, and the young up-and-coming kids who come out of college getting new jobs, they're looking for buildings with vibes. Long Island City's got that great vibe. There's great bars, restaurants, great transportation out there. So we are really anxious to do something.
You could be in Roosevelt Island, too. I mean, Philip said...
Right?
Nice, quaint little place. It's
Absolutely.
Great. I mean, how many units do you have?
1,100.
I mean, so that was a big conversion. People were thinking of the conversion. Do you think it converted Long Island?
I think in Roosevelt Island, I don't think we're ready for it yet there. I mean, too many people are fixated on the concept of renting in that area, and there's that limited profit co-op type situation. I don't think we'd be looking at converting that anytime soon.
You did Long Island City. You had...
Yeah, we had one of the early condo projects there, 5SL, Fifth Street Lofts. There's 117 units. And we got through that before.
Took you a little at the
Took
end.
a little longer at the end, yeah, because after the subprime, and people had a lot of trouble getting end loans. But we're through, and there's it's not as bad as Williamsburg, but there's a lot of product, for sale product in Long Island City right now, and I wouldn't look to go back there anytime soon.
Rick?
Well, we've our one foray outside of Manhattan in New York was in Gowanus, and we were quite bullish on the development prospects for Gowanus, but then the environmental issues sort of put a wet blanket on that issue, and several of us have decided that maybe it isn't quite as ripe for development as we'd hoped.
So, I think, in summation, 1 year later, things are looking much brighter on the residential market. The for sale market, I mean, it's 2 years after Lehman, the for sale market is looking stronger. Good product, good developers, good people, sponsorship is what's doing the deal. And I'd like to thank all four of you for being here. Philip Eisenberg, Urban American, Dave Von Spreckelsen, Toll Brothers City Living, Richard Marin, Africa Israel Investments USA, and last but never least, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential. See you next week.
Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, All Nation Renovation, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP. Additional funding has been provided by grants from AVR Realty Company, LLC, Beechwood Organization, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, C.B. Richard Ellis, Cushman & Wakefield, the Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Stephen Napolitano, First American Title Insurance Company, Friedman, LLP, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns & Gian Tomasi, Grubb & Ellis, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa & Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Markham LLP, Marcus Millichap Real Estate Investment Services, Margolin Weiner & Evans LLP, Massey Knackle Realty Services, M&T Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Moynihan Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Orphanides and Associates, Sterling and Sterling, Urban American, the Wickoff Group.